So we're recording to show audience that we have 3 over 18. There you go. And now today's discussion is on assisted suicide in the United States, and we will watch a quick video.
Someone just knocked on my door. He's here at my door right now, and he wanted me to call 911. He said he just murdered someone.
Okay, and he's there right now?
Yes, ma'am, I'm scared.
And he said he murdered someone?
Yes.
Okay, is there any way that maybe I can speak to him?
Would you like to talk to 911 on the phone?
Sure. Hello?
Yeah, what's going on, sir?
So, as I said, I've murdered someone, actually. I'm fascinated by more artistic ways of murder, the way they cut them open, just slice them to pieces. I mean, such care, such love. I would kill again.
That I'm alive. Nothing goes wrong. The thing inside of me, it's like the appetite. It's like a wolf that's feeling the hunger.
You checked it on your photos, you checked every trick I did. Why are you here? What happened? Tell us what, what happened. Well, has anybody gone to the house yet? We know what happened. We have, but we want to hear from you.
Or we have an idea. You're the owner of the church. Start at the beginning, man. What caused all this?
Very beginning, I asked my mother for permission to die, or rather, kind of commit suicide. Because, well, that doesn't really matter why I wanted to kill myself.
Sure it does. Tell us.
I'm bored with life. I don't like life. I don't like people. I don't like living, basically. There's really anything depressing about it. It just is what it is. And
Okay, so Davis later went on to violently murder his mother in her own home. But what if assisted suicide were legal for psychiatric conditions? Perhaps violent individuals such as Davis would choose to end their life and use those services before acting on their violent fantasies. Then maybe Kimberly Hill would still be alive today instead of her son who sits in prison. Assisted suicide, which bear with me, let me get my other clip back up here. So assisted suicide should be legalized in the United States to include those afflicted with severe long-term psychiatric conditions and who have made extensive consideration to end their lives to avoid further suffering. And I am a first responder as a firefighter and a crisis counselor, and I do work with suicidal clients every day. I have encountered many people who become closed off to any additional help because support just doesn't work. This matter is relevant to you because it is your fundamental right to hold your loved one's hand while they take their last breath. Yes, suicide prevention is paramount, and I will explain that soon. However, based on the current stage that we are in history, suicide is inevitable. That means people will die by suicide. And based on current laws, these people must die alone, scared, and unable to say goodbye. However, you should be given your right to be there with your loved one when they choose to end their life. And then maybe perhaps you'd get the chance to show them a connection to life in that process. Over 1 million people die by suicide each year in the United States. Just think about how many of your loved ones fall into that 1+ million. You have loved ones right now suffering in silence who may want to die, and you don't know. So the suffering associated with psychiatric conditions is just that, it's suffering. And this suffering should be taken into consideration when viewing the medical aid in dying or MAID laws. As stated by Crystalline Salters, PhD, severe psychiatric conditions can cause many symptoms such as a detachment from reality, hallucinations or delusions, disruptions in communication and motor skills, and even extreme physical pain. But currently the U.S. has MAID legalized in only 10 states. According to Hannah Rahim in a Harvard Law publication, to be eligible for MAID, an individual must have a terminal illness diagnosis that will result in their death within 6 months. But it's estimated, according to the National Library of Medicine, or NLM, that 20 to 60% of patients with psychiatric conditions will encounter treatment resistance, which does occur when a condition doesn't improve after a sufficient course of treatment. Now, due to MAID only applying to those who are extremely close to their diagnosed death, it is safe to assume that millions will be making serious attempts to end their life, causing such shock and panic in those involved. Unplanned suicides have tremendous impact on everybody that's involved and on resources. When it comes to the financial toll, the Centers for Disease Control, or the CDC, explains that suicide deaths and suicide attempts in 2020 cost society approximately $500 billion in medical costs, work loss, and quality of life costs for the attempt survivors. NLM explains that firefighters such as myself responding to suicide calls have a statistically higher risk of suicide and lifetime suicide attempts, depressive symptoms, nightmares, insomnia, and many other symptoms that can be quite severe. Family members also are left feeling confused and shocked by the abruptness and the untimely and unplanned death of their loved one. Now, the Campaign for Dignity in Dying interviewed a man named Neil Douglas, whose father took his own life in February of 2019 after entering the terminal stage of multiple sclerosis. And Anil was quoted stating, it meant he had to choose a dangerous, unpredictable, and lonely way to end his life. The law meant we couldn't say goodbye. These lasting impacts on society can be felt by many. However, keeping prevention the focus in an assisted suicide program can likely bring more acceptance to ongoing treatment and reduce the burden on resources. Sorry, I'm doing that from there. Okay. So this prevention should be the underlying goal to help reduce what may increase a person's risk, while also increasing things that help promote resilience. And this prevention goal could then be achieved by having a specified period of time for review and treatment strategies to be explored. The CDC does give 7 really good key strategies that are effective or could be effective in eliciting this change. And they're listed here with our strengthening economic supports, creating protective environments, promoting access to delivery, and the rest of these. Now, the Swiss Info channel interviewed a UK man named Alex Pondofel, who was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. And Pondofel told Swiss Info he would have taken his life a few years earlier had he not been given the green light to assisted suicide. He does plan to use these services when he feels the time is right. However, Pondaful stated, the ideal of assisted suicide has improved my quality of life because I knew I could end my life whenever I wanted to. At the end of the day, it prevents suicide. Suicide prevention through an assisted dying qualification program could likely bring or appeal to many who have endured many failed treatments and even resistance to treatment. Psychiatric conditions, Psychiatric conditions do cause extreme symptoms that can interfere with daily life, with 20 to 60% of these patients encountering treatment-resistant conditions. Since suicide is technically legal, these individuals do have the right to end their life. However, due to assisted suicide for severe psychiatric conditions not being legal, they are forced to do so alone, scared, and unable to say goodbye. I'll leave you with these words from a Reddit user by the name of Those Starbuck Lovers. It just doesn't make any sense. I wanted to be dead, but they forced me to stay alive, and now I have to pay for medication and therapy to keep me from getting to that point again. I feel like I'm literally just being kept alive to pay for bills. Done.